Alice and Representative Jennifer Bacon. So I just want to highlight them and thank them for their dedication to this work and their ongoing support for more equitable and restorative practices throughout this state. And just noting, obviously, that the meeting is being recorded. So hopefully folks have already noted that, and just want to highlight that so that it'll be available for everybody afterwards as well if you weren't able to attend. I want to highlight that restorative justice in Colorado has been, and in an ongoing way, has been elevated through 2 bipartisan acts in 2022. And that's important to highlight the work that has happened already so we can prepare for what's to come. That was forwarded by the legislative sponsors who were actively engaged in last year's RJ Policy Circle. And so we're seeing impact from making connections and building these bridges. And I just want to highlight that this work does have impact. The theme for today's circle is key intersections between restorative justice practices and public health, behavioral health, and community well-being and safety. And so that's a lot, that's a mouthful. We're trying to figure out, again, how does this work intersect with health and in many different facets, in many different forms. And so we'll have a chance to hear from some folks who are on the ground doing this work on a daily basis. I also want to give a little bit of a highlight to the Colorado Public Health Association and their Health Equity Coalition for coordinating with the groups planning this year and providing time for their members to join in today from their annual Public Health in the Rockies Conference in Keystone. No small feat to join an event like this when you're in the beautiful mountains of Keystone. So thank you for making that happen. And I want to just also invite everyone who's on the chat to briefly introduce yourself, your name, your organization, your interests, whatever you'd like to share in the chat. We aren't going to ask people to unmute because that would be chaos, but we'll invite you to do a quick chat flood of introduction so we can see who all's here from around the state and what brings you to this circle. So go ahead and do that at this time if you'd like, and let folks know who's here. And I'm going to invite, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just as a friendly reminder, it's better if speakers kind of keep the interpreters in mind and speak a little bit,
Slowly.
not as slowly. Thank you.
You got it. Sorry, I speak too quickly sometimes. I'll try to moderate my speech. So thank you for that reminder. I'm going to pass things over to Liz to take us on.
Cool. Thanks, Luke. And I will do my best to slow down as well. I know Luke and I, as well as everyone here, are really excited and have so many things to share that our urgency is really coming from a place of, in our speech patterns are coming from a place of excitement. But good reminder, thank you always to slow down. So my name is Liz Porter-Merrill. I'm one of the co-hosts or co-moderators with Luke for today. And I wanted to explain a little bit about our process and our design. So we're going to be using a concentric circle model, not unlike last time. This is the same as last year's. So our intent is to create a space for everyone to hear from a diverse community of voices to strengthen relationships between policy leaders and restorative justice leaders and allies, and to sort of illuminate some of the amazing work that's being done around restorative justice in the context and at the intersection of behavioral health, mental health, public health, and public safety and wellness. So we're really excited to bring to you today a sharing circle that's representative of voices doing really inspiring work in restorative justice and restorative justice adjacent arenas in the state. And we then have, so the sharing circle, the next circle is our policy leaders, our listening circle. And we're so pleased to have some amazing legislative leaders and policy leaders from the state in lots of different arenas to reflect back what they're hearing and what they're excited about around restorative justice in the state. And then inclusive of everyone in our state and beyond who's interested in restorative justice, really leaning into that value of inclusivity. We have the broader community circle, and that's everyone on the call who may not be part of the sharing circle or the policy listening circle. And we encourage you to listen and engage through the chat. And there will be another opportunity like the one Luke just offered around introducing yourself to also offer a reflection about what you hear during the sharing circle, and maybe even include some of the amazing work you're doing in your pocket, your area, your sector of the state. We also have an empty chair featured because we want to honor that not all the voices are in this room. And we want to make sure that we are always mindful of the voices and the people who may not be represented in this space today. And then finally, I wanted to just sort of introduce a little bit about restorative justice values. The slide up right at this moment is one that Alicia Garcia has let us borrow for today about the 5 R's. And so we have, this is from Dr. Beverly Title and Longmont Community Justice Partnership. She is now passed away, but she gifted to us a really great, solid, easy, simple way to think about restorative values sometimes. And it's about relationship and respect. And a way I like to think about it is those two are about preventing conflict and harm. Responsibility and repair are about addressing conflict and harm. And reintegration is about transforming conflict and harm. So with that grounding, restorative justice is not just a particular program. It's a number of practices, values, and principles. And it's a different way of being with one another and living our lives. And so we really want to expand people's understanding of restorative justice beyond maybe the juvenile and diversion setting in the criminal legal system, and understand what's possible in all of our communities and all of our organizations and all of our work in our families and our homes, all over in our schools. So that is our goal, is for everyone to really think even bigger about what's possible with restorative justice and restorative practices. So with that, I want to welcome our policy leaders, our listening circle members for today, and the legislative co-hosts will each have a minute to introduce themselves and offer anything that they'd like to talk about, maybe something that excites them about restorative justice, why maybe they wanted to be a co-host for this, this circle, this policy event. And so I'll introduce our legislative co-host first, and then I will introduce the rest of our policy leader listening circle members. So
Liz, could you stop sharing your screen, please,
yes,
so that
please.
we can see these fine folks? Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. I appreciate it. So first up,
and Karen will switch.
Oh.
Can you spotlight yourself?
Oh, me?
I'm sorry, Chris. The interpreters are switching. Just one moment.
Thank you.
And while that's happening, if I may make another announcement in Spanish. Si alguien está presente y requiere la asistencia de un intérprete en español, por favor, mándale un mensaje en privado a la señorita Deb, D-E-B, dejándole saber que requiere ayuda de un intérprete. Gracias.
Are we good with the ASL spotlight now? Excellent.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure everyone is able to participate. So first up, we have State Senator Julie Gonzalez, who is also one of our amazing co-hosts last year. And Senator Julie, would you like to offer a few remarks?
Good morning, buenos dias, everybody. I am so honored to be here in the circle again with y'all this year. I am I have been really upset and frustrated with the way that the issues of safety have been weaponized politically. And I love the work that is happening here, like between all of these amazing organizations and out in community, because I actually think that doing that work is what heals our community. And yet know that you have a lot of folks in solidarity at the Capitol to combat the ways that safety and crime and harm have been really used as political obstacles to making progress. And so I'm really excited about the work that we've achieved and the work that we'll continue to do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Really appreciate you being here. And next up, we have State Representative Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez, another co-host from last year. Thank you so much for your commitment. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez. I represent House District 4 in Northwest and West Denver. I'm glad to be on this call with all of you, and just, would echo everything that Senator Gonzalez has said around the work that you all do, and how much I appreciate the fact that you are all out there, educating people about these concepts, about these practices that are, do have evidence behind them and research, and just how incredibly important it is. The only thing that I'll say is, in conversations that I've had around things like even restitution, and that yes, repairing harm can be in a financial way, can be in a material way of repairing, whatever damage had been done to, maybe property or what have you. However, the real piece of it is the emotional and mental health, and focusing on that trauma aspect, and how do you repair that harm so that emotionally people can be in a different place. So again, appreciate everything that you all do, and I'm so excited to be here today.
Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, and like Luke's modeling, if you are excited about someone, maybe, just do this so that you can convey that through Zoom. So our third co-host for today is State Representative Jennifer Bacon. Welcome so much. We're so glad to have you part of the team. You'd like to say a few words?
Sure, it is such an honor and privilege to be here, particularly with everyone on the screen, and for my colleagues who have had the opportunity to really run some legislation that has been intentional in dismantling systems, processes that have been designed to, what I say, keep our communities in a place of oppression. And so, I come to this work particularly with an education background, where I was first introduced to restorative justice as an educator trying to end the school to prison pipeline. And so what I do know is that there are systems and structures that were created to have these outcomes that are disparate, and they are man-made, which means women like us can unmake them. And so I was just leaning into my sisters here who are in the Capitol with me. And so it's going to take intentional work, it's going to take conscious work, and it's going to take a liberatory mindset to do this work. And so I hope to rely on the things that I learned here and all the expertise that you all are willing to share to walk through those halls and pull apart these laws and processes. So again, thank you for allowing me the space. I do also want to echo what you heard from the senator, but also to remind everyone here that these days there are more of us than them, and we plan on keeping it that way. But we need your support, and we are ready to do all of the work necessary and to continue these fights.
Oh, heart bursting, so excited. Cool. Okay, let's get going with introducing the rest of our policy leaders for the listening circle. We have Matt Baca, the Director of Community Engagement Division of the Attorney General's Office. Do you guys want me to slow down for tech purposes, or are we good?
I am not seeing Matt yet, so if
Okay.
Matt is able to unmute, I might be able to spotlight.
Okay, great. Then we have Yumiko Doherty, the Director of Behavioral Health Association Agency. Shoot, I don't know the acronym so well. BHA, Strategy Planning and Engagement Division. We have Brandon Davis, Policy Advisor to the Governor's Office for Office of Policy and Research. We have Gretchen Russo, Judicial and Legislative Administrator for CDHS, as well as a member of the Juvenile Parole Board. She's also an RJ Council member. We have Ben Chavez, Program Manager for the Latino Coalition for Community Leadership. We have Ray Gupta Fitzgerald, Interpersonal Violence Prevention Programs Director for CDPHE Prevention Services Division. And we have Dr. Shannon Sleeve, Professor of Graduate School of Social Work at DU, as well as RJ Policy Leader, Policy Researcher Extraordinaire. So we're really excited to have you all here to participate with us today, and I'll turn it back over to Luke.
Yeah, and just briefly again to highlight that there are a couple of organizations that have put this work together that are doing really intentional building of this field around the state. And I want to highlight briefly the Colorado Coalition of Restorative Justice Practices and acknowledge that Deb Witzel is the chair of that group and has put in a lot of time and energy really building this organization from the ground up. And I want to highlight that CCRJP, the acronym for that long name, is a membership organization to which you all are invited. We hope that folks will consider joining if you're not already a member. It's for restorative justice practitioners, people who are interested in this work, who want to know more about this work, who want to be involved in this work. It's for organizations, it's for individuals, it's for folks who just want to support it in any way they can. So please consider joining, and you can do that by visiting ccrjp.org, where you'll find a lot more information about the organization. The organization works to provide networking opportunities for people around the state doing this work, from communities to systems and everything in between, provides technical assistance, provides opportunities like this to gather through trainings, through events, through other learning opportunities. So it really is a wonderful place to come, to be a part of a community where you can learn more, where you can support this work, where you can get involved. And again, ccrjp.org is the place to go to find out more. The next event that they're holding is October 10th. There's an RJ squared training series. So restorative justice and racial justice, and the intersection of those two is really the focus of these RJ squared events. Upcoming in particular is Indigenous Peoples Day with Native American leaders Edward Valandra and Brett Shelton, who will be discussing the distinction between land back versus land return. It'll be $10 for members to attend, $29 for non-members. And I think we'll try to put a link in a chat for that event. There's also an appreciation reception for Senator Pete Lee, who recently stepped out of the Senate, October 28th from 4 to 6 at Fleming Mansion in Denver. And that will be, I think, linked as well, but it's also available on the website, I believe, ccrjp.org, if that hasn't become clear already. So we invite you again to check out that organization, learn more about what they are doing. And I'll pass it over to Liz to talk about the RJ Council briefly.
Cool, thanks, Luke. I'm seeing in the chat some difficulty with the ASL interpretation spotlight. Did we get that figured out?
I think we have it back.
Okay.
I may have maxed out our spotlights and then it bumped and decided Luke was going to be the only one on screen. So I apologize for that.
No worries. I just want to make sure that Daniel and Sabrina are all set and Dove has everything they need. Okay. Cool. Okay. I'm going to talk real quickly. Oh, darn it. I need to slow down and talk quickly about the Restorative Justice Council. The Colorado State Restorative Justice Council is a 19-member legislatively creative council that is housed in the State Court Administrator's Office, so the judicial branch. We're one of the first of its kind in the country. And it has really transformed, I think, what we are capable of doing in Colorado because of the RJ Council. The State RJ Council is has 3 really significant initiatives that it has pursued over the last several years. One was a 5-year study proving the success of restorative justice within the context of juvenile diversion. We have a lot of great data to prove that restorative justice reduces recidivism, as well as has really great outcomes for people who have been harmed. The second significant initiative the RJ Council has undertaken in the last few years is every year we do annual microgrant funding, and that is focused on diverse, innovative, and community-based restorative justice projects across the state. Recently, we funded CCASA, Colorado Coalition Against Sex Assault, and Jenna Harper, one of the CCASA staff members, brilliantly created a transformative justice approach to expanding the use of RJ and TJ within the state, and collaborated with multiple organizations, which was really cool. And you're going to get to hear a little bit more about what that yielded from 2 of our sharing circle members who got to work with Jenna, both Cass Harris and Sin Chapman. So listen for that. And then the third initiative the RJ Council is really proud of is a prosecutor, public defender, restorative justice team to support a systemic shift toward a restorative paradigm within the adversarial system, particularly the criminal legal system. We're modeling a dyadic shift where normally in the adversarial process, we have 2 sides, and one side advocates for, prosecution and convictions, and the other advocates for the person who was person who caused harm. And often people who've been harmed are left out of that process. And so we've been trying to model a dyadic shift in that and really step up voice of people who've been harmed. We also offer trainings and then implementation support with communities who want restorative justice. And Sin Chapman will be speaking a little bit more about that work in Restorative JeffCo. So with that, we have so many cool things going on. I'm really excited to introduce you to some really truly inspiring restorative justice leaders, as well as restorative justice adjacent leaders, allies of our work, doing trailblazing things across the state. Lots of diverse voices to represent that intersection between restorative justice and behavioral health. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the sharing circle members who will share their experiences from the field. We have Alicia Garcia, who's also going to be circle keeping for us, Ames Stenson, who's also going to be circle keeping for us, Cass Harris, one of my best friends these days, Sin Chapman, and Jason Vitello. So I will turn it over to you, Alicia and Ames. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your voices today.
Hey, thank you. What an intro. Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Garcia. I use she, her, hers, ella pronouns. I was just blown away. I'm looking at the participants rolling through, and we are in the presence of greatness, y'all. This is incredible. It is truly humbling to be a part of this family. I'm excited to be here. So we're going to start off with this sharing circle, truly walking the walk and not just talking the talk. We understand that restorative framework is definitely relationship-based, and sometimes it can feel, for lack of a better term, a little sacrilegious to be doing it virtually. But alas, this is no new game for us. We're used to this virtual space. What makes a connection circle or restorative circle different from any other type of dialogue? Norms, circle guidelines, and the intention to truly build community and to heal. So we set up these circle norms and really go over them before every circle in order to set it apart from other types of dialogue, in order to really set up a predictable, a consistent framework that is also in service to making sure that everything we do is in service to healing. I want to be mindful around the language of trauma informed. We're going to go away from trauma and go into healing. So we're going to speak and we're going to listen from the heart. What does that mean? That means speak your truth to power. Keep it 100. We do that so that we can really be truly informed from an equitable place and from a place that's rooted in empathy. Additionally, that listening deeply from the heart allows us to create a space of vulnerability and also non-judgment so that we can truly speak our truth. Trust you'll know what to say and say just enough. All right, we already have like a very limited time here, but we also want to honor each and everyone's story. That's the powerful thing about Circle, is it's a pathway to storytelling so that we can all get closer together. So service to that trust you'll know what to say and say just enough. Ames here will be timing each participant. We're going to try and keep it to about 2 to 3 minutes apiece. We're going to try and address 3 prompts if there's time. We may close our last prompts with a hashtag, a 1-word hashtag, if we are limited on time. And yeah, that's about it for our circle norms. Everyone here in the sharing circle, we also recognize that typically in circle, what is said stays and what is learned may leave. This call is being recorded. We got 100 people up on this. So we know that what we say today will be shared. So I just want to name that and service to that confidentiality piece. Additionally, everyone always has the right to pass in any restorative process. It has to be voluntary. We don't enforce or mandate. So if you're not feeling it in that moment, please feel free to pass. And we as the circle keepers will be sure that we circle back to you. So those are the circle norms. That's what makes a circle truly restorative. And yeah, I'm going to pass it on to Ames, and they can take it from there.
Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Ames Benson, pronouns. I am
The interpreter, I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, can you hear me better now? Okay, thank you so much. So I get to just help remind us of our intention for our circle this morning before we jump into our circle prompts. And so we know that restorative values and principles and practices are found and hold great promise across a diversity of communities and spectrums in our Colorado communities. And so today we are going to be exploring the intersectionalities of restorative practices with public health and behavioral health, mental health, and community well-being and safety. With that, again, we just invite we invite listening from everyone from this place of creative possibility and how we can be in this space together. So with that, we are going to go into our first prompt, and our order of our circle of sharing is Cass, Jason, Alicia, Sin, and myself. So I'll pass it back to you, Alicia.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ames, would you mind putting that circle order in the chat for folks?
You bet.
Wonderful. All right, everyone, we got our first prompt. Are we ready? Well, first of all, can I get a thumbs up? Do we all agree to the aforementioned guidelines? Can I get a thumbs up? Beautiful. Appreciate y'all. All right, so our first prompt is this. Introduce yourself and share briefly about your current work. What are you already doing that can be considered restorative?
Hello, my name is Cass Harris. I am the Director of Services for Project Elevate. Project Elevate is really rooted in offering a safe place for participants coming out of jails and prisons to engage in that healing work that we were discussing earlier. So we've been working very closely with the Circles Project, and Liz is amazing. We've really, from policy to implementation to admin reviews, everything that we're doing, you can see and the participants are witnessing the power of restorative justice within their experience in a traditional, in a different way than traditional halfway house settings have been. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cass. All right, we're gonna pass it on to Jason.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? So yeah, I'm at Colorado Public Health Association's Public Health in the Rockies Conference, tucked away in a corner. They wouldn't give me a late checkout, so I had to come to the conference center. And if you hear like mobs of people, I apologize. I tried to get to as quiet a spot as possible. I'm the president of the Colorado Public Health Association. I'm also the Equity and Community Development Manager of the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. I am the Senior Workforce Development Specialist at the Public Health Institute at Denver Health. I'm also an adjunct professor at the Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Denver. There's a lot of things that come to mind related to RJ work that, what could be considered RJ work that I do. One, with the CCRJP, I will be spending a lot of time at the Capitol, really fighting for more dollars and money and funding for programs that are restorative. And we are seeing a very, very unfortunate regurgitation of that tough on crime, war on crime rhetoric. Unfortunately, a lot of, frankly, a lot of so-called progressives and liberals sometimes are the biggest impediments to this work because they want to show their tough on crime credentials as well. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of aggressive laws. You know, this current administration's funded the police more than the previous administration, right? And we talk a lot about what doesn't work, and the criminal legal system doesn't work. And it's one of the few, probably the only system that's like the worse it does, the more money we give it, right? The more parole violations, the more recidivism, the more people who are getting arrested or revoked, like the more money we just, you know, we just throw at it. Meanwhile, smaller programs like Public Health for Public Safety, one of the initiatives that I lead, has to go, right? We have a small budget and we have to go before sunset review to justify our existence in ways that the criminal legal system, which gets billions of dollars a year, never has to, right? So I think a big part of our role, especially within public health, is helping to change the narrative, change the givens and change the narrative, right? Used to be you could smoke on an airplane or in a hospital, right? Public health came through and through incremental change that fact, change the givens. And to do that, a big part of what we do is changing the narrative. And I believe that our role in public health is to amplify the voices of those who are most impacted, the systemically excluded, not to be the guitar, but to be the amplifier. And through story, through data, right? And data is not just numbers, it's narrative, telling the story, changing the narrative, which in turn can change hearts and minds, which in turn can change policy, which in turn can change the material conditions of real people. And that's what we're about. Thank you all.
Wu-Tang for the children, Jason Vitello. Alicia Garcia, I found my way through this work very much similar to Representative Bacon, as mentioned, through the pathway of education. But before that, I come from a lineage of social justice activists. And it's been wild out there in schools today, y'all. It's tough. I worked for Aurora Public Schools as a dean for nearly a decade. I supported San Francisco Unified School District for several years as a system support specialist with district-wide implementation and restorative justice restorative practices, and many other modalities. And so I'm very much interested in systems. I'm even more interested in stories. And so I've been fascinated around that intersection. I've had the honor and privilege to work with Resolutionaries, which was founded by the creator of the 5 R's framework, Dr. Beverly Title, and recently was handed over Resolutionaries and given the opportunity to maintain the legacy of the 5 R's framework. Beyond that, beyond just restorative practices, I am a trained facilitator in liberatory design. Liberatory design is a design framework that really strives to look at systems change from an equity, with a strong equity focus. The major areas that I am funneling my energy into is building capacity. And that's building capacity not just in schools, but building capacity in community, building capacity with youth, and building capacity, of course, with school staff. But it's going beyond that. I quit Royal Public Schools last year, resigned, because I felt like my knuckles were getting bloodied from pounding on doors that just weren't open. I was trying to change the system from the inside out and was running into a lot of struggles. I recognized that it wasn't enough to just disrupt the school to prison pipeline, that if we were truly preventative, if we were truly being proactive, it could not just be siloed within schools, that we needed to reimagine what education was, that we needed to reimagine what educational spaces look like because of the institutional trauma that many have experienced within these school spaces. It was also looking at it as this is more than just a carceral, like most of the time when we hear of restorative justice, it's within a judicial setting. Then it became a school setting. And to me, I was starting to realize how critical it was if we were truly going to be effective in these efforts, that we needed to look at it from a more comprehensive viewpoint. So I got out and I became more heavily involved with CCRJP. I became more involved with public health spaces and policy. I truly believe that very much like my brother Vitello was talking about, like it's more than just the data. And I was getting really tired in school spaces pushing RP, pushing restorative practices, and folks saying like, oh, but it's not an evidence-based practice. And so then I started to ask myself, how might we decolonize evidence-based practices and start looking at practice-based evidence? How can we really look at collective healing as a form of safety? We know that so far, putting more SROs in schools hasn't been truly effective. And yet, much to Jason's point, that's what we keep doing. So I think everything that I'm doing right now, I strive to be restorative. Beyond the educational spaces, I have current partnerships with CDPHE, HICPUF, the EPA. I saw there are some folks from Douglas County on the call. I've had a partnership pre-COVID with Douglas County Healthy Youth Coalition. So, oh, and I want to give a shout out to the ACT Summit and the REACT series, which is ACT is Active Collective Trauma, and it's a community focused summit. So it's nothing about us without us sort of model, and it's truly being run by community. So I'll end with this, like it's, when we look at collective healing, it's not enough to just, say for instance, in a school setting, it's not enough to just do it towards the student. We need to do it internally, organizationally. If we're in public health, it's not just about the patient or the client. It's about how are we implementing restorative framework internally to ensure that we are healing the healers and serving the stewards so that we can all serve in the way that we deserve. So thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it on to Sin.
Thank you. Good morning. Sin Chapman, she, her. So I am a mom and a nana. I'm also a long-serving RJ facilitator with lived experiences. And I'm very proud of that part of my introduction. As far as my career, I'm a former public school teacher, former district attorney, and a retired juvenile court judge. Right now, I live in Edgewater, Colorado, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit, Victim Outreach Incorporated, serving victims with 8 police departments in Jefferson County. So they don't have to have an active case to receive services from us, but we support them from the crime scene or their trauma for as long as they need us. When I moved here 4 years ago, I realized that in my home county, Jefferson County, I couldn't find RJ. When I first met Liz Porter Merrill, I said, I can't find my people. So blessedly, I met Liz Porter Merrill. She helped a small group of us in Jefferson County become a very large group, a very large working group. And for 2 years, we've been thoughtful and very intentional in planning for RJ practices in Jefferson County. We've learned that our school system is about 4 years in. We have some law enforcement agencies and some that I partner with that have some types of restorative justice practices. So we decided in really this cross-section of our community work group, a multidisciplinary group, I mean, of really everybody, service providers, the courts, our Family Justice Center. C3 is our service agency for people who have caused harm. I really struggle with labels personally, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of who is at our very large round table causing this organization and structure in Jefferson County. So we have some seed funding. Really, really grateful to the council for our funding to hire our coordinator, and the work group is in the process of hiring our coordinator. And so we hope to just, not just, because it's huge and amazing, but we hope to cause organization around the programs that are already, the RJ programs that are already functioning, and then help to build through programs with the court, collaboration with our district attorney's office, pre-charge with our law enforcement, and then working with health systems to just put a cross-section of programs together that are like-minded and yet respect the work that's already going on, and helping build new programs wherever the community feels that new RJ programs need to be. Then in the meantime, Liz introduced me to CASA's program, the Project Elevate program, and through CCASA. And what an amazing journey that has been for me personally and for my agency. My personal work years ago was in the prison system facilitating. And so I'm really proud to have been a part of that work in the metro area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sin. So I'm Ames Stinson, pronouns they them theirs. I am the Inglewood Municipal Court Restorative Justice Program Manager. We are 15 months into a new restorative justice program here with the courts, and we are serving adults and youth who have received a ticket for an incident, giving them opportunities to repair harm with themselves and each other and in our community. And what I'm really proud of around our work, and I think actually it shows in that I think I counted at least 10 participants on this call today are from our work in Inglewood in our area, which is pretty amazing to show that we're really building a groundswell of restorative skills and awareness and practitioners, whether we call ourselves that or not. And so it's really wonderful to be continuing to collaborate with our school districts in our area, with our community members, with other city agencies and departments, businesses and nonprofits and higher education folks in our area as well. And so the fact that we are offering those services is certainly a testament to the restorative practices that we're doing in that sense. I'm also here representing, I'm putting a different hat on, representing the Restorative Rainbow Alliance, which is an LGBTQ-led group of restorative practitioners who felt and saw a need and see a need within restorative justice, restorative practices of how do we further support LGBTQ folks going through our restorative practices and processes, but also how do we help, so how do we create inclusion in that, and how do we help educate circle keepers and facilitators in honoring and creating inclusive and welcoming spaces, as well as how do we increase the number of LGBTQ folks in restorative practices in our world as in what we're doing. Again, whether we call them ourselves restorative practitioners or not, how can we continue to utilize these practices to heal our own harms and the harms within our own community as LGBTQ plus folks, as well as to support and be represented in this field in who we are and how we show up in the world. And so one of the things that the Restorative Rainbow Alliance has recently launched is a RRA code of facilitator code of conduct, which is meant to be in alignment with, in support of other state facilitator codes of conduct. And it's a starting point. It's a starting point to say, this is needed. How do we continue to be more inclusive in our language, in our wording, in our environments of bringing in and supporting LGBTQ plus folks in our communities, not just when harm has occurred, but also on the front end. How do we use these practices in ways to really bolster and build our community through support systems? We know specifically that ideas of belonging and connectedness can combat loneliness, have impacts around our mental health and well-being. And so if we're thinking about how do we use restorative practices from a building of and collection and intersectionality with social determinants of health, we need to be thinking about how do we use them to build and support one another and build up these connections with each other. And we're seeing that in the work that we're doing with the Restorative Rainbow Alliance and some of our future plans as well. So with that, I'm going to end here because I want to make sure that we have time for one more question. We're going to kind of be doing this on a lightning round, folks. So the next question that we are going to ask, we'll have maybe a minute or two. So I know that this is going to be kind of what comes to mind, what rises up as priority. But the prompt here is, what new opportunities, including policy recommendations, action steps, are being or could be explored as it relates to using restorative practices within your work and communities in which you engage? And so if you could just, after you respond, pass to the next person, and we will go ahead and move forward with this prompt and go from there. So Cass, can I pass it to you?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I guess in my arena, I would say we are the new opportunity. So the program that we're implementing is the new opportunity to implement some RJ work. So I would say, which we're kind of working on with policy, we're working within the policies that are currently standing for the state. And so the policies, what I like to explain to people is that the policies explain what I have to do or address. It doesn't necessarily say how I have to do it. And so that's where we got creative with this RJ work. So if this was just the standard of working with this population, I think that we are a gender responsive program, but this could be implemented on both sides, on either side of things. So I think if this way of working with the community corrections population was just the standard for the state, we'd probably start to be in a better place pretty quickly. Because I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is not something that we can't handle in the community. These people don't need to be incarcerated to heal. And it's really about healing And so we're not providing that environment in prison, but we are providing that environment and structure. So it's accountability and compassion, as Grandmother Strong would discuss. That those two go together, and one without the other is not going to get us where we need to be as a community.
Thank you, guys. So well said. Jason. Are you still with us, Jason? He might have gotten lost in the PHIR vortex. Jason, are you there? All right, well, in service to time, and we will also, as always, circle back. I'll text Jason offline here. I'll go ahead and answer this. Another project we're working on right now, I am subcontracted with the Conflict Center. Shout out to Beth. I think Beth's on the call here. ED of the Conflict Center. And we are working on, the Conflict Center was awarded a bid through an RFP process with the City of Aurora for a Restorative Justice pilot program. And so we, as one of the managers behind this project, I hate that word, manager, as one of the stewards to this project, we are really, as opposed to saying, oh, we should invite community members to the table. No, it's not our table to invite community members to. So what we're doing in service to that is really going within the community and finding spaces where these conversations are already happening. So we can really get that community voice and that community-centered design around the recommendations for the City of Aurora project. We're doing it through, we had an amazing opportunity to do what we call a Liberation Lab with over 300 participants at the ACT Summit, using the framework of liberatory design to directly inform decision makers, policy makers, administrative leadership around what the community wants to see as far as systems change. And these aren't high in the sky, unattainable ideas. They're extremely attainable. They're not like extremely cost prohibitive. They're very reasonable cost-wise. And so our hope was to really find ways to establish community voice, take that community voice a step further into community design, and then take that a step further and have community partners who have those connections within different state and local agencies to say, like, all right, you're wondering, so what, now what? Here are some solutions. And these solutions are not based on assumption, they are based directly, they're directly informed through empathy, and as such, equity in action, baby. So, and what, like, I don't know what else needs to be done policy-wise, because we keep on, like, I feel like taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. It was kind of a sad year, I think, as far as this last legislative cycle, and I feel like that needs to be named. I feel like that needs to be named so that we can see what happened, what it was like, and what we can do in the future, right? Jason, welcome back. Do you see the prompt in the window?
I do. Sorry, I had to step away.
No, you're good.
Conference business. So you mentioned the ACT Summit, Alicia. I wonder if it would be, I don't know how much you spoke about it, but I could provide a little bit of information and context around that, because I think it's pretty relevant.
Yeah, and even maybe tap into that funding piece, because we need to keep on keeping on with the ACT Summit.
So I lead an initiative called Public Health for Public Safety at the Public Health Institute at Denver Health. And that came out of House Bill 1409. I partnered with the CCRJP, I think it was in 2016. And they were doing a report called Victim Speak, where they were engaging with self-identified crime survivors. And we oversampled individuals from BIPOC communities, right? Because we know that within the victim services arena, traditionally, programming and funding has historically been centered around white female victims of domestic battery. And that's very important, but it has been at the exclusion of BIPOC individuals and men and male youth in particular, who BIPOC men and male youth experience disproportionately high rates of violence and victimization, including repeat victimization, and don't get the same level of care, support, or service. Some of the other findings from that report were that BIPOC individuals are treated differently within the criminal legal system, whether they are victims or offenders. And across the board, crime survivors across all demographics want restorative solutions and approaches to addressing crime, violence, and victimization that center healing and restoration more so than they want harsh penalties for their offenders, right? And it also really illuminated the idea that we have this false belief that within the criminal legal system, one is either an offender or a victim, right? Most are both, because hurt people, and heal people, right? So House Bill 1409 came directly out of that report, and it allocated $850,000 a year out of the Department of Corrections and reinvested it into the Office of Violence Prevention at the State Public Health Department. And
Jason, I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt just for a second, lovingly here. If you could just take another 30 seconds and then
Sure.
Peterson get the chance. Thank you.
Yeah, so that funding helped fund the ACT Summit that Alicia mentioned. Culturally responsive programming like the Therapist of Color Collaborative. This is a collaborative of over 40 therapists, all BIPOC. This is all funded by the LCCL. Ben is here. Big up, Ben. So yeah, we need to continue to create programming that works, programming that is a viable solution, so we can not just point to the criminal legal system and keep saying that that doesn't work. We can also say, here's what does work. Fund this, right? So that's a little bit of some of the work that I'm doing. Thank you.
Well, I completely agree with Cass. In JEFCO, Restorative JEFCO, we feel like our program is the opportunity. And so in that way, I can just really echo Jason's comments that it's, for me, it's not, I mean, coming from victim services, I feel like I have to say it is victim-centered, but I would prefer the healing-centered or the everyone-centered. Every community deserves these programs. Every community should have a work group coming together and organizing RJ practices that are effective for their community. So what we're doing in JEFCO is not going to work, perhaps even in neighboring counties or communities. But every community deserves this opportunity. We need to be really strong in community education. I mean, even last week at my own board of directors annual meeting, and here I've been preaching restorative justice for 2 years, and a majority of my board members, maybe I haven't been doing a good job, or there's a listening issue, but there's still a struggle with what is that? So it was a great opportunity for further education, and an RJ council member on my board of directors to help. It's that community education piece, and then it's the funding piece. People have to understand it, and then we have to get it funded. Every community deserves this healing-centered practice.
Thank you, Sin. I'm going to drop a couple opportunities that I see in the chat here, but I also just want to name maybe one of the potential calls to action is to invite all state departments, health departments to connect with restorative practitioners in the area and have a community conversation with community members to say, what are the needs here? How are restorative practices already being utilized? And what are the opportunities so that so that we can further the collaboration together? Again, I'm going to put some more things in the chat here, but for now I want to pass it back over to Luke. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, and I want to really appreciate all of the wisdom that was shared and the great programming, the great work, the great connections and relationships that were highlighted during the sharing circle. And so thank you to everyone who shared. Thanks for the circle keepers for keeping us moving. Obviously, there's lots and lots that we could be talking about, and we could do this all day and not run out of things to say in terms of building this field and highlighting the good work that's happening. We do want to turn, though, and give our listening circle a chance to reflect a little bit on what they heard and some of the opportunities that they see, having heard a little bit about what is happening and having heard a little bit about some of the possible opportunities moving forward. I think Deb's going to drop the prompt here in the chat, but I'm going to pose this prompt to our listening circle specifically. And those are the 10 or so folks that we highlighted at the beginning, including our representatives and senators and other folks in the policymaking realm. So here's the prompt. I'm going to read it out loud and it's also in the chat. Having heard from the sharing circle, what is one reflection or action that stood out to you as being helpful or necessary to more fully realize the intersections between RJP, restorative justice practices, and public health, behavioral health, and community well-being and safety as we move into the upcoming legislative session? So to boil that all down, that was a lot of words. What do you see as critical to move this work forward in meaningful ways? That really is the prompt, having heard from our sharing circle. And I'm going to be fairly directive here. We're running short on time, so I'm going to hold everybody to 2 minutes at the most. If you take less, that's fine. But when it gets to 30 seconds, if you can keep me on screen, tech folks, I'll give you a wave when we get to 30 seconds, and then I'm going to cut people off at 2 minutes. I want to apologize in advance. So let's go ahead and start with Senator Gonzalez, since I see you here on the screen, if you don't mind starting our sharing.
I have really appreciated hearing from the folks doing direct work, what is working and where greater funding opportunities I think would be helpful. I will name that right now we're in a weird place because we cannot, it looks as if we're projected to continue growing as a state economically, and yet there are like 7 different things or 15 different things that could shift and throw us into a recession. And so those budgetary concerns are going to be something that I think we're all collectively watching very closely, because we also know that the economy and economic forces can also lead to greater harm and conflict and tension within community, right? And so I think that's something that we're all gonna look and watch closely. I'd love to understand and hear continued efforts around, there was a piece around I can't remember who exactly said it, evidence-based practices and practice-based evidence, and like hear a little bit more about that distinction, and how to then start to share that out with my other legislative colleagues. Thanks.
That was Alicia Garcia.
Word.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And Ben, since you're on the screen there too, do you mind just going next? Would you be open to that?
As I unmute, to be completely transparent, yeah, what she said, you know, to be honest, yeah, I'm gonna pass, man. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. That's a privilege that we all have, is to pass. So thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. Let's go to Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I appreciate everybody sharing what they shared today, because it is important. And like I said at the beginning, I think a big part of this is educating. You know, this morning when I was taking my son to school, I was thinking about this very question, right? And like, how do we not only educate, but how do we show other people in the community? How do we show other policymakers and folks that have those roles how this works, and the true effectiveness of this, and how it makes our communities better? And so, you know, I think how we do that is continuing to do things like this, and invite those folks, like have been invited today, but continue to do that and invite folks and make sure that they're also hearing this information. They're also learning. And how do you, it's almost like, I feel like you have to keep talking about it over and over again and making sure that people fully understand and grasp the concepts and understand that we're not trying to make this about, because this is victim-centered, right? This work is victim-centered, but it's also about, again, the repairing of harm, and that helps everybody involved. And so, you know, I think that sometimes when I talk about this and with some of my colleagues, I think I'm a little bit like out there with all of this. And so it's just helpful, I think, for different types of voices to be sending these same messages. And so it needs to come from different places, right? And I think that's how we can have that impact, is making sure we have different messengers to all of the different places.
Thank you so much, Representative. Let's go to Representative Bacon.
Thank you. I caught a few phrases that I want to kind of, I was going to say ride with, sorry, it's early. But the first phrase I heard was practice-based evidence. And the second phrase is that we need to say, here is what does work. You know, and kind of picking up on the themes around narratives, you know, I want us to be in a place where we're no longer defending or reacting, but saying what we are going to do. And so, you know, if someone wants to ask me about, do you want to defund the police? I'd be like, let me tell you what I'm going to do. Because I think we spend too much of precious time responding to other people's ideas, and it keeps us in the mud, which is the whole purpose of it. You know, there is no power insight behind what they're saying, but they're saying it to stay relevant. And so we need to stop doing that and instead talk about what it is that we can do. So my last reflection is, I think I need everyone's phone number so that we can start putting things together, and quite frankly, including that list of here's what does work. It is our responsibility as policymakers. And unfortunately, sometimes I have to remind my colleagues, but you know, you will hear me in session saying, we are the builders. Our imagination needs to be limitless when it comes to what's possible, because that's what we fought for by way of having power to get here to do. So I want to thank everyone as well for sharing. It's very insightful.
Thank you, Representative. And just to note too, that is one ask that we will have at the end, is to be identifying who, oh, this person's doing something that I really need to connect with. So do keep that in mind, everybody, as you're listening. Where are the relationships that you want to further and continue and build, so that we can continue these conversations? So thanks for highlighting that, Representative. Let's go to Yumiko Doherty from the BHA.
Yes, thank you so much. This was such a wonderful opportunity, especially as the Behavioral Health Administration is just getting off the ground. We're about 4 months old now, and I can already see so much opportunity here for intersection. When the Behavioral Health Administration was created, one of the core values that was identified for the creation of the BHA was a value of truth. And behind that was the need to acknowledge past harms that our system has caused the people of Colorado, and how do we rebuild trust in our systems and repair that harm. I think from a high level, you know, creating a behavioral health system across the state that allows people to access the types of services they need when they want them in their own communities is in and of itself a way to prevent undue harm, unnecessary involvement in other systems like criminal justice and child welfare, in talking to people experiencing homelessness, right? That is a huge piece of a history of being unable to access the services that they need. And so I think building a more robust, comprehensive behavioral health system, hopefully in and of itself, helps to reduce harm for the people of Colorado. But I would just say, similar to Representative Bacon, I am so excited to learn learn more from all of you. I think it's a critical moment in time to hear from you more specifically about the types of behavioral health services and supports that can help promote restorative justice practices in our state. So very much looking forward to connecting with many of you over the coming months. And I'll put my contact information in the chat as well. And just want to also say, Commissioner Morgan Medlock, who is heading up the BHA, is sorry she couldn't be here. She is speaking at the next Restorative Justice Council meeting. And so we're excited to build a partnership with all of you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to Brandon Davis from the governor's office.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We sure can.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate being here. You know, I'm a firm believer in doing a little bit more listening than talking, so I don't want to speak a lot here. I think it's, for me, from my perspective, one of the things that I do is I sit back and I listen, I observe, I watch, I read as much as I can, because I want to see where the perspectives are coming from. I want to hear everybody's perspective. I have my own life experience coming from Washington, D.C., being born in Washington, D.C., living as a Black man, and being in the governor's office and being in the world of government politics. And I think my perspective is one in which I get to bring my world experience, my lived experiences, but also integrating other folks' lived experiences, hopefully into policy. And so I echo a lot of the things that some of the other folks have said. I worry particularly about funding opportunities for future years. One of the things that we were able to do, while it was acknowledged that the state did fund the police this year, we also did historic amounts of funding for community-based organizations. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't highlight how important that is, and that is actually going to have an impact in communities, whether it's from Senate Bill 196 or Senate Bill 145. One of the things we did is we listened and we implemented some things in that policy. We specifically carved out restorative justice services as one of the eligible uses for that dedicated pot of funding, for millions of dollars of funding, in fact. And so I'm really excited to see, I think we've got something like 89 or 86 applications in the queue for some of those multidisciplinary grants. And so I'm really interested to see what community-based organizations are going to be able to do with some of those innovative strategies. I'm really excited to actually get some data out of that, so that hopefully we can re-up that funding in future years. And so I'm going to keep listening. I'm going to keep integrating the ideas that I hear into policy. But I think it's important for me to do more listening than talking and pontificating. So that's my piece. Thank you.
That was perfect on time, Brandon. Thank you. And thanks for again, the work that the governor's office has done to further this work, and hopefully that can continue. Let's pass it to Ray Gupta Fitzgerald. So Ray, you're up.
Cool. Thanks so much, Luke. I'm super excited mostly to see so many faces that represent such a variety of spaces, because that means that we have the capability and the motivation to make change in all these different avenues. What I'm hearing from all of the speakers, I would synthesize that to say that safety and health and wellness is really a basic need and a human right. And yet, historically, systems, agencies, structures really treat it like a privilege. So I think we have to be very intentional about dismantling the systems or the structures that uphold oppression and really make liberatory, equitable, and I'll even go further and say compensatory policies or other mechanisms to make changes. We have to actively engage and fund our community organizations doing these pieces of work out in community, and those communities experiencing the most burden. I have the incredible fortune of working with the Crime Victim Services Grant Program, which will be undergoing a sunset review process in the next ledge session. And what excites me the most about that program is being housed at the Department of Public Health. We get to take a very different approach. It's kind of a mind shift, but it's really grounded in the idea, something that Jason Vitello spoke to, around the concept of a victimized offender, and knowing that the disproportionate numbers of folks in community and the connections that the research gives us around repeat victimization, polyvictimization, and where that burden comes from, that, let me think this, the prevention of all forms of violence should really come from the source or the root. And we have ignored that piece, that healing. And we've always been looking to the symptoms and the harm that we're carrying around on our bodies. And so what's super exciting too is we now have this beautiful new Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and they will also be working in the public health department. And so what works is that public health model, because at the end of it, we're all in this for caring about humans. Our goal, our job is to examine the ways that we become broken and then correct course so that we can move as a society, as Coloradans, from barely surviving into thriving. And that's going to require that we stay curious and we root in our own humanity and really dig in and find a deeper understanding. And I know Alicia spoke about evidence-based work. Evidence-based work is community-driven work because the evidence is that these marginalized, excluded, silenced, oppressed communities have survived despite all the atrocities heaped on them in this country. That's your evidence. So base that, please. The numbers are connected to human lives, and that's what we need to do differently. We need community, and there's nothing more robust and longitudinal evidence than surviving centuries of harm done. We should learn from the richness that community holds.
Thank you, Ray. That I can't interrupt when you're talking about these powerful things. So thank you so much for putting it out on the table and really saying.
Wu-Tang.
Yeah. I love this group. I'm going to pass to Gretchen. Thank you, Ray. We can't hear you, Gretchen. Okay, we're going to go to Shannon and then we'll come back to Gretchen to wrap up.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, as a reminder, I'm a professor at the University of Denver. And so my role here is often not as a policy maker, but as a policy researcher. So in my role, I'm really concerned with figuring out how we can better understand, record, and share the impact of restorative justice policy and practice in our communities. So yeah, I too attached a lot to this phrase about evidence-based practice or practice-based evidence, or how we're talking about evidence. And I think what I would say, and what I do say when people talk to me about the need for evidence around restorative justice, is that actually, like, we have the evidence that we need. We have it in both numbers and in narrative, as someone had said. And I think that what's missing is the relationships and the trust and the community that's needed, because we think we're compelled by evidence, but in actuality, we're compelled by our relationships and our obligations to other people. And I think that's what being in restorative practice teaches us, that it's not actually information that changes our mind. It's where that information comes from, what our experiences are, what our connection is to it. So the thing that I'm reflecting on is just the critical importance of relationship building in our local communities. I'm hearing a lot about government and community working together, and just thinking more about the role of organizing and creating good policy. So there really is going to be no healing in policy for us without community. Just recognizing that community is both the pathway to creating meaningful policy, as well as the pathway to making policy matter in our communities. Otherwise, it's just sort of this empty vessel, which is a thing that my research is unfortunately showing. And I'm happy to talk to more people about that, or any other questions you have about the evidence for restorative justice. I'll put my contact info in the chat.
Thank you, Shannon. Gretchen, are you able to join in? We still can't hear you for some reason. if you want to drop some thoughts in the chat, that would be wonderful. And while you're doing that, Gretchen, I'm going to pass things back to Liz to wrap us up. But before we do that, I want to again appreciate the listening that did happen here. I mean, clearly everyone in this listening circle has been listening deeply to what was shared and sees the opportunities and the potential as we move this work forward. So I want to appreciate these folks here that are highlighted on screen now that have just shared what they heard. Because I think that is an important step. And again, building these bridges, building these relationships, helping to expand and enhance the community of restorative practices throughout the state and beyond. So thank you, everyone who shared in the listening group. I'll pass it to you, Liz, and we'll look for some comments from Gretchen in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, so many inspiring voices here today. I'm putting the invitation that Deb had put in earlier for the listening circle members into the chat for you all to contribute your voices to this. Please put your answers to this question in the chat so that we can all share knowledge of what's happening across the state and sort of cross-pollinate all of our ideas. And know people who, like Luke had said, who resonate with you and reach out. A lot of contact information in the chat at this point. And of course, there are a lot of other amazing restorative justice initiatives happening across the state, maybe under the name and guise of restorative justice, maybe under the name of something else. And we just really want to highlight that this is just a drop in the bucket, or the first ripple of the ripple effect of all of our work together. And I really appreciated some of the listening circle members, Ray in particular, speaking to that piece. Please look for other opportunities to connect with CCRJP or the RJ Council, such as the Racial Justice Conversation on Indigenous Peoples Day. And I just wanted to end with closing. Many of you may be familiar with Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy. And she speaks beautifully about fractals, and it feels really relevant to our conversation today. So a fractal is a never-ending pattern. Fractals are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales. They are created by repeating a simple process over and over in an ongoing feedback loop. Tune in to the prevalence of a spiral in the universe. The shape in the prints of our fingertips echoes into geological patterns, all the way to the shape of the galaxies. Then notice that the planet is full of these fractals. Cauliflower, yes, and broccoli, and ferns, and deltas, and veins throughout our bodies. Tributaries, all of these are echoes of themselves at the smallest and largest scales. Dandelions contain an entire community in each spore that gets blown on children's breath. How we are at the small scale is how we are at the large scale. The patterns of the universe repeat on that scale. There is a structural echo that suggests two things. One, that there are shapes and patterns fundamental to our universe. And two, that what we practice at a small scale can reverberate to the largest scale. And so with that, I hope you see how each of us vibrating at the small scale and building what we believe to be our future, a restorative and transformative future, we're also building at a large scale together. So I really appreciate that interconnectedness and each and every one of you for being here today. Thank you so much to our hosts and to our policy leaders. And we look forward to seeing you again next year, and hopefully before then at some of the CCRJP events. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, everyone. And if anyone wants to put their video on and wave before you leave, please feel free to do that so we can see everybody's faces. And Gretchen, I'm sorry about your audio. We missed hearing from you.
Oh my gosh, so much good stuff in this chat. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you all.
Gretchen. Yes, thank you, Gretchen.
Without your sacrifice, where would we be?
So Luke and Liz, we did invite our listening circle folks and sharing circle folks, any that could, to stay on a little bit and debrief with us. We'll see if folks have some questions or feedback or other next steps to share.
I was going to ask if you wanted us here. You can kick me out and you're done with me.
And I think we can stop the recording.